Analysis. It sounds hard, but it's actually pretty simple. Hi there, it's great to have you here. If you do much writing in school, chances are that you'll end up doing some kind of analytical writing. You might be doing a rhetorical analysis, or a literary analysis, or who knows what else kind of analysis. The point is that analysis is a common type of analytical writing, and it can be tricky at first because it requires a different kind of attention or discipline when compared to other things like research writing. Instead of going out into the world and finding sources while doing research, analysis requires focused attention to detail. You think deeply and thoughtfully about a single thing rather than going out and collecting information from a lot of different places. And because that kind of focused attention is unfamiliar to a lot of people at first, it can be hard to know where to get started with analysis. The good news, though, is that analysis is fairly simple, and it really just involves answering three questions: what, so what, and how do you know? Today, I want to show you how to answer those questions and write a really fantastic analytical paper. But before we do that, I think it's worth spending some time to get on the same page about what the goal of analysis really is. At its most basic, analysis is a process of explaining how something works by breaking it down into its individual parts and then explaining the role that each piece plays in contributing to that object's overall purpose. So, for example, we could analyze a pen by pulling apart its separate pieces and then explaining how each piece contributes to the pen's overall purpose, which of course is to write. And here we can see a pen, broken down and ready for our analytical insight. You have the barrel. This piece houses all the internal stuff, but it also gives you something to hold on to, and it makes the pen look nice from the outside. The cap keeps ink from leaking all over the place when you aren't using the pen, and of course the clip lets you clip your pen onto something, like a pocket for convenient transportation. Moving into the center, you have the nib. That's the part that transfers ink to paper, allowing a person to write. There's the grip, which a person holds while writing, and the converter, which holds ink so that you can keep writing without having to dip your pen in an inkwell every 6 letters. If our goal is to analyze the pen and explain how it works, we can identify each individual piece and explain how that piece contributes to the overall purpose of writing. And at its most basic, that's what analysis is. Of course, it's not likely that you'll be writing a paper in which you analyze something as simple as a pen. Rhetorical and literary texts can get kind of complex, but the basic process of analysis remains the same. And like I mentioned, it happens in 3 easy steps. The first step of analysis is to document the individual pieces of the thing you're analyzing. Break it down, cut it up, separate its individual components. Our goal is not to see the pen, but to see the individual working pieces of the pen. When you answer the question what, you're telling your readers what you noticed, and it's important to be as specific as possible. Remember, we're looking for details, and the more specific those details are, the more convincing your analysis will be. So, for example, if you wanted to say something about an author's word choice, don't just say, the author uses a lot of scientific and technical language. That might be true, but it doesn't really show readers the actual details, and it doesn't specifically answer the what question. In order to do that, it would be more effective to say something like, the author uses scientific and technical words like lysis, hydrophobic, and mitochondria. See how this sentence provides more specific details? That's what we're after when we're doing analysis. Be detailed, be specific, and be thorough. I've yet to see a writer be too specific, but I've seen countless writers not be specific enough. Of course, your job is not just to list every specific detail that you notice. More than likely, you'll have limited space to write your analysis, and a bulleted list of every specific detail by themselves would be pretty uninformative and kind of boring. So as you prepare to write your analysis, you'll want to focus on the most significant details in the thing that you're analyzing. You aren't going to be able to talk about everything, so you'll need to draw your reader's attention to the most important things. And in order to do that, you might begin by looking for patterns in the thing that you're analyzing. Are there things that the creator or author does consistently? If so, those patterns might point you to the most significant details. Or there might be places where the author violates their patterns and does something unusual. These are also a likely place to find significant details. Whatever the object you're analyzing, remember that your job is to explain how the overall object functions. So focus on the details that contribute the most to that purpose. For example, when we were talking about the pen, we focused most on the details that help the pen to function. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about aesthetic decorations or colors because our objective was to explain how the pen works, not how it looks. So think about the overall purpose of your analysis and then focus on the details that contribute the most to that purpose. And again, be as specific as possible. But identifying specific details is, of course, only part of the job. Anyone can take apart a pen or notice details in a poem or advertisement, but an analyst goes one step further by explaining the significance of those details to their readers, by showing them how those details work. So again, we didn't just point out the nib of the pen, we explained that the nib transfers ink from the pen to the paper, helping the pen to do its job of writing. So when you identify important details in the thing that you're analyzing, the next step is to spend some time explaining how those details contribute to the object's overall purpose. For example, how do the scenes in an advertisement of a car racing through the forest motivate the viewers to go buy that car? Or how does the rhyme pattern in a poem contribute to the poet's feeling of joy? Often I'll see less experienced analysts only partially explain the significance of the details. Often they'll say what they mean, but they don't go as far as to explain how they work to contribute to the purpose of the object. For example, they might say something like, the author uses scientific and technical words like lysis, hydrophobic, and mitochondria. These words show that they know about science. This isn't bad writing, but it's only part of the analytical job. Remember, the question now is, so what? Why do these details matter? It's true that they show that the author is knowledgeable, but why does that matter? So what? This analysis could go a step further by saying something like, the author uses scientific and technical words like lysis, hydrophobic, and mitochondria. These words show that they are knowledgeable, a move that prompts readers to trust them and believe their message. See how this sentence goes a step further and explains why those details matter in terms of the object's overall purpose? The words are not just a demonstration of the author's knowledge. They have a purpose, one of getting readers to trust the author. Or you could say something like, the rhythm in this poem, a mix of trochees and dactyls, evokes the feel of nursery rhymes, and then go on to explain why that pattern matters by saying, this rhythm complements the nostalgic tone of the poem, bringing readers back to their childhood. Again, don't just point out the details and don't explain them in isolation. Show your readers why those details matter by explaining how they work and how they contribute to the overall purpose of the thing you're analyzing. And it's worth remembering that how you answer the so what question will depend on the kind of analysis that you're doing. For example, if you're doing rhetorical analysis, and let's be honest, why would you want to do any other kind? The purpose of your analysis will be to explain the significance of those details in terms of how they motivate the audience to do what the author wants them to do. And finally, once you've spent some time to identify the details and explain their significance, it's important to show your readers how you know that your analysis is in fact valid. This step gets us back to one of the primary purposes of academic writing. Your readers don't just want to know what you know, they want to know how you know it. They want to see where your knowledge comes from and how you got it. So take a little time to explain the logical steps that you took to interpret the details in the way that you did. If this were a math problem, I'd be telling you to show your work. Put your thought process on the page so that your readers can see it. So, going back to our sample analysis, if we read this, we could say, that's fine, this is what you know, but how do you know it? What leads you to believe that the nursery rhyme rhythm is nostalgic or evokes childhood? You could show your work or make that thought process explicit by saying something like this. The rhythm in this poem, a mix of trochees and dactyls, evokes the feel of nursery rhymes. Nursery rhymes are a common fixture in early childhood literature, so the poet's use of those rhythms brings back readers' memory of the nursery rhymes they learned as children, thereby enhancing the nostalgic tone of the piece. Now, I understand that this might feel like a little bit of a tedious process, but remember that you've spent a good long time analyzing this object, and your readers haven't. What may feel obvious to you might not be so obvious to them. so make sure that your readers get it by taking the time to explain your thought process. Show your readers how you know something, and you'll make it much more likely that they understand your analysis in the way that you intend. Your job as an analyst is to show your readers the things that they might overlook and to make the implicit explicit. So even if your reasoning for how you know feels obvious, say it explicitly so that nobody can miss it. So even if how you know something feels like it would be obvious, say it explicitly so that nobody can miss it. Now, before we quit, I just want to show you a real-life example of academic analysis so that you can see how it works in the wild, and also to show you that I'm not making this stuff up. So here's part of an analytical paragraph that I wrote when I was finishing up PhD school. The focus of this paragraph is to analyze a physics girl video and to explain how she communicates her ethos or her persona to her audience. With some minor adjustments to include information that shows up elsewhere in the paragraph, we can see answers to all three questions in this one passage. What do we notice? Well, we get a good list of specific details from the video. So what? We get a description of what those details contribute to the creator's overall persona. That's why those details matter. And how do I know? Well, the paragraph concludes with an explanation of how those details contribute to the purpose of constructing an authoritative but relatable persona. It's as easy as that, even for someone working on a PhD. So see, you're already doing real serious academic work, and all it takes is answering 3 simple questions. Also, just as a reminder, you do need to answer these 3 questions, probably in just about every paragraph that you write, but you don't need to answer them in the same order every time. As you can see in the paragraph we just talked about, I answered those questions in a different order, and that's totally fine. As long as the pieces are there, you'll be in good shape. So that's it for today. Like I said in the beginning, analysis can be a little tricky at first because it's a different kind of skill compared to the research papers that we might be more used to writing. But the reality is that analysis is easy peasy. You just have to answer 3 simple questions, and you don't even have to go to the library or the library website to find the answers. Before you go, let me know if you have any questions or if there's some other writing topic that you'd like me to talk about. My goal is to be helpful to you, so don't be shy about letting me know how to do that best. In the meantime, we're always talking about writing and how to make it more effective and meaningful, so I hope you'll stick around to see some of the other things that we've already talked about. Either way though, thanks for spending this time with me. Happy analyzing, and I'll see you next week.